things. You pay to me, and I pay to Pascal, who provides everything.
One of these was cut so badly by the studio that the director sued to get his name removed from the credits. One got its cinematographer arrested during production, and one spent 20 years locked in a vault before anyone was legally permitted to see the full version. Number 15, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, 1973. Sam Peckinpah made this one for MGM and delivered what he considered his most personal film, a slow, melancholy elegy for the American West, told through the story of two old friends on opposite sides of a final confrontation. James Coburn plays Pat Garrett, the lawman. Chris Christopherson plays Billy. Bob Dylan wrote the score and appears in a supporting role as a drifter named Alias, which is either inspired casting or a complete mystery, depending on your tolerance for Dylan's screen presence. Either way, the music is extraordinary. The problem was that Peckinpah and MGM despised each other by the time production ended. The studio took the film away from him entirely during editing, cutting it from approximately 120 minutes to 106, removing sequences that Peckinpah considered structurally essential and replacing them with something he publicly called a disgrace. He spent years trying to get his version seen, and largely failed during his lifetime. The theatrical cut was the version most audiences knew for over a decade. In the United Kingdom, the British Board of Film Classification required additional cuts to the violence sequences before certifying even that already compromised version for release. Australia classified it for restricted adult audiences. Several European territories required further edits beyond what the British Board of Film Classification had already demanded. In 1988, 5 years after Peckinpah's death, a work print version closer to his intentions was discovered and eventually reconstructed into what is now known as the director's cut. The restoration process took years, and the final result is not a perfect representation of what Peckinpah wanted, but it is considerably closer than the theatrical version MGM released. The full director's cut is currently streaming on multiple platforms. It is a genuinely different film from the theatrical version, and the difference is not subtle. Number 14. Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, 1974.
We're gonna have to make our move now.
Peckinpah appears on this list twice because no other director of the decade had his specific combination of artistic ferocity and catastrophic relationships with studio authority. Bring Me the Head of Alfredo. Garcia is the only film he made with complete creative control from start to finish. No studio interference, no imposed cuts, no executive visits to the editing room. The result is the most purely personal film he ever made, and the most disturbing, which are probably not unrelated. Warren Oates plays Benny, a down-at-heel piano player in Mexico who learns that a powerful Mexican patriarch is offering $1 million for the head of the man who impregnated his daughter. Benny knows where Alfredo Garcia is. Garcia is already dead. So Benny digs him up and begins the drive across Mexico with the decomposing head in a burlap sack, talking to it, arguing with it, making his peace with what he has become. It is one of the strangest road movies ever made and one of the most honest films about masculine self-destruction the decade produced. United Artists distributed it and was horrified by what they received. The film was released with minimal support and almost no marketing. Critics destroyed it on release. The New Yorker called it the worst film of the year. Audiences stayed away entirely, and it grossed almost nothing at the box office. In the United Kingdom, the British Board of Film Classification required cuts to multiple violent sequences before certifying it for restricted release. Australia banned the original cut and required substantial edits before passing a restricted version. Several European countries refused the original cut entirely. Over the following decade, the critical consensus reversed completely. By the mid-80s, Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia was being called a masterpiece by the same critical community that had buried it on release. The full uncut version is currently streaming on multiple platforms. Number 13, Mean Streets, 1973.
These are honorable men.
Martin Scorsese made this one for Warner Brothers on a budget of approximately $300,000, shooting partly in New York and partly in Los Angeles, using locations that substituted convincingly for Little Italy, and delivered a film so raw and so kinetically alive that it essentially invented a new grammar for how American crime cinema could operate. Without mean streets, there is no Goodfellas, no Reservoir Dogs, no Boogie Nights. The debt that the following 3 decades of American filmmaking owe to this film is almost impossible to calculate. Harvey Keitel plays Charlie, a small-time operator in the mafia hierarchy, trying to balance his religious guilt against his professional obligations. Robert De Niro plays Johnny Boy, his reckless, self-destructive friend whose inability to manage his debts is pulling Charlie toward catastrophe. The film has almost no conventional plot structure. It moves the way the neighborhood moves, through bars and pool halls and back rooms, driven by music and sudden violence and conversations that go nowhere in particular. The censorship battles centered on the violence sequences, particularly the climactic car shooting, and on the film's frank depiction of criminal activity presented without moral correction. The British Board of Film Classification in the United Kingdom required cuts before certifying it for restricted release. Australia classified it for adult audiences only after flagging multiple sequences. Several American regional boards attempted to block screenings in their territories. The film made around $3 million theatrically, which, on that budget, was a significant return. More importantly, it established Scorsese as a filmmaker of the first rank, and gave De Niro the platform that directly led to The Godfather Part 2 and Taxi Driver. The full uncut version is currently streaming on multiple platforms. Watching it now, knowing everything that followed from it, is a strange experience. The influences run in every direction simultaneously. Number 12, Badlands, 1973.
I think I got him.
I don't know.
Well, I'm not going down there and look.
Terrence Malick made his debut with this film. He announced himself as a filmmaker, so completely unlike anyone else working in American cinema, that the industry genuinely did not know how to respond to him. Badlands is based loosely on the real-life killing spree of Charles Starkweather and Carol Ann Fugate in 1958 Nebraska, and Malick approaches the material with a detachment so total and so consistent that it becomes its own form of horror. Nobody in this film behaves the way people in movies are supposed to behave when terrible things happen. Martin Sheen plays Kit, a garbage collector who kills his girlfriend Holly's father and takes Holly on the run across the Dakota Badlands. Sissy Spacek plays Holly and narrates the film in a dreamy, disconnected voice that treats the murders with the same register she would use to describe a high school dance. That tonal flatness is the film's central achievement and its central provocation. There is no dramatic scoring of the violence. There is no invitation to feel the appropriate emotions. Malick simply observes. Several countries had serious difficulty certifying it. The British Board of Film Classification in the United Kingdom required cuts to multiple sequences before approving a restricted release. Australia classified it for adults only after an internal debate about whether the film's apparent moral neutrality toward violence constituted endorsement of that violence. West Germany required cuts and attached restricted classification. In the United States, several regional censorship boards pushed back against the national certification. They attempted local restrictions, with particular objections to the apparent romanticization of the central couple, despite the body count surrounding them. Warner Brothers acquired the film after its initial run and gave it wider distribution. It made modest returns at the box office, but its reputation grew steadily and substantially. The full uncut version is currently streaming on multiple platforms, and it remains as formally radical today as it was 50 years ago. Number 11, Soldier Blue, 1970.
That old man is trading off rifles.
Ralph Nelson made this film for Avco Embassy. He delivered something so graphically violent in its depiction of the 1864 Sand Creek Massacre that it sparked one of the most sustained censorship battles of the entire decade. The film is explicitly about the systematic slaughter of Native Americans by the United States cavalry, and Nelson made the decision to depict the massacre with a physical specificity that no mainstream American studio film had previously attempted on the subject. Candice Bergen plays Cresta, a white woman returning to civilization after years living among the Cheyenne. Peter Strauss plays Honus, a cavalry soldier escorting her. The film follows their journey and builds toward the massacre sequence, which runs for approximately 10 minutes and depicts mutilation, killing of women and children, and the full horror of what the historical record documents. Nelson wanted audiences to sit with what had actually happened and understand it in physical terms, rather than abstract historical ones. The British Board of Film Classification in the United Kingdom required substantial cuts to the massacre sequence before certifying it for restricted release, removing several of the most graphically violent moments. The cuts were so extensive that the sequence lost much of its cumulative impact. Australia banned the original cut entirely and required significant edits before passing a restricted version. West Germany required cuts and attached an adults-only classification. In the United States, the film received an R rating after cuts. Still, several regional boards attempted local restrictions, and exhibitors in certain territories refused to book it regardless of the national certification. The parallels to Vietnam that critics drew immediately upon the film's release gave it an additional layer of political controversy, further complicating its commercial prospects. It grossed around $12 million domestically, which was considered a solid return for a film this difficult. The full uncut version is currently streaming on multiple platforms. The massacre sequence, seen complete and uncut, is still one of the most confrontational things mainstream American cinema produced in the entire decade. Number 10, The Wild Bunch, 1969.
Get rid of anybody. We're gonna stick together just like it used to be.
Sam Peckinpah appears on this list for the third time, which at this point requires no further explanation. The Wild Bunch predates the strict 70s timeline, but its censorship battles extended so deeply into the decade, and its influence on everything that followed was so total that excluding it would be a greater distortion than including it. When this film arrived in 1969, it did not just push the boundaries of screen violence, it relocated them entirely, and everything made afterward had to reckon with where Peckinpah had moved them. William Holden leads a gang of aging outlaws on one last job in Mexico, already being overtaken by the 20th century. Ernest Borgnine, Warren Oates, Ben Johnson, and Edmund O'Brien fill out the gang. Robert Ryan plays the former associate hunting them for a railroad company. The film is about obsolescence, loyalty, and the specific dignity available to men who have run out of legitimate options. The opening and closing action sequences redefined what American cinema was permitted to show and how it was permitted to show it. Warner submitted the film to the MPAA and encountered significant resistance. Multiple cuts were demanded before the studio could secure an R rating, and even the rated version retained enough violence to generate censorship responses internationally. The British Board of Film Classification in the United Kingdom required further cuts before certifying it for restricted release. Australia banned the original cut and required substantial edits. West Germany required cuts and restricted classification. The studio then cut the film further for re-release without Peckinpah's knowledge, removing approximately 10 minutes of character material that had survived the original censorship process. That version circulated for years. A full restoration was eventually completed in 1995, reinstating the excised character scenes alongside the violence that had caused the original problems. The fully restored version is currently streaming on multiple platforms. It is one of the 10 greatest American films ever made, and it is impossible to watch without understanding completely why it frightened people so badly in 1969. Number 9, Straw Dogs, 1971.
It's a time, Mrs. Sumner, when you are ready to beg me for it.
Straw Dogs appeared on the previous list for its streaming availability, and it belongs here too because its censorship history is so specific and prolonged that it deserves examination from a different angle entirely. The British Board of Film Classification ban in the United Kingdom was not simply a matter of cutting sequences and approving a restricted release. The board determined that the film could not be certified in any form because its central moral argument was the problem. That is a considerably more serious position than objecting to individual scenes. The argument the British Board of Film Classification made was that the sexual assault sequence presented assault ambiguously in ways that could not be remedied by cutting because the ambiguity was structural rather than incidental. Removing the sequence would not resolve the problem because the sequence was not the problem in isolation. The film's entire moral architecture, in which a passive man discovers violent capacity and is apparently liberated by that discovery, was what the board found certifiable. That determination held for 18 years. During those 18 years, the film was legally available in British cinemas, where it had screened before the home video legislation came into force, but could not be sold, rented, or broadcast. It existed in a legal gap under the Video Recordings Act, creating the peculiar situation of a film being simultaneously legal to project and illegal to distribute on tape. The British Board of Film Classification revisited its position in 1989, following the Furman review of several video nasty classifications. They certified the film for restricted video release with cuts. A fully uncut certification did not follow until 2002, 31 years after the original release. Peckinpah died in 1984, having never seen the United Kingdom ban lifted. The full uncut version is currently streaming on multiple platforms. The debate the British Board of Film Classification was trying to prevent by banning it has continued anyway, which is generally what happens. Number 8, Performance, 1970.
There's nothing wrong with me. I'm normal.
Donald Cammell and Nicholas Roeg co-directed this one for Warner Brothers in 1968 and delivered something so genuinely strange, so formally radical, and so aggressively transgressive in its content that the studio locked it in a vault for 2 years rather than release it. A Warner Brothers executive's wife reportedly vomited after a screening. The studio had funded a gangster film and received a work that dismantled it from the inside out, using the tools of the French New Wave, psychedelic culture, and a genuinely disturbing examination of identity and performance. James Fox plays Chaz, a London gangster who goes on the run after a killing that exceeded his instructions and hides out in the home of a reclusive rock star named Turner, played by Mick Jagger, in his only truly great screen performance. What happens in that house over the following days, as Turner and his 2 companions slowly dismantle Chaz's carefully maintained sense of self, is the film. The boundary between the 2 men dissolves gradually and deliberately, and the ending refuses to resolve what that dissolution means. The sexual content generated immediate problems with the British Board of Film Classification. The scenes between Fox, Jagger, and Anita Pallenberg were flagged repeatedly during certification review and required cuts before approval. The drug use sequences were flagged separately. Several individual images were removed entirely before the board would certify it for restricted adult release. Warner Brothers had meanwhile made their own cuts to the film before the British Board of Film Classification even reviewed it, removing approximately 20 minutes of material that Cammell and Roeg had considered essential. Cammell spent years trying to restore his version and largely failed. The version released is neither exactly what the directors made, nor what the British Board of Film Classification would have passed uncut. The current streaming version represents the best available reconstruction. Roeg's career flourished after this. Cammell struggled for decades and died in 1996. He reportedly watched a monitor showing his own pulse flatline in his final moments, which is so consistent with the sensibility of performance that it seems almost too precise to be true. Number 7, Papillon, 1973, Franklin J. Schaffner directed this one for Allied Artists and Solar Productions with a budget of $13 million and a cast anchored by Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman, which should have made the censorship problems manageable. What he had instead was a film based on Henri Charrier's memoir about the French penal colonies in French Guiana and Devil's Island. And the authentic recreation of those conditions was so brutal and so sustained that certification boards in multiple countries found themselves objecting not to individual scenes, but to the film's entire environment. McQueen plays Charrier, known as Papillon, for the butterfly tattoo on his chest, a safecracker wrongly convicted of murder and sentenced to the French penal colony system. Hoffman plays Louis Degas, a forger whose money and skills make him a target and whose friendship with Papillon becomes the film's emotional center. The film follows Papillon through repeated escape attempts, solitary confinement sequences that run for extended periods of screen time, and a final escape involving a raft of coconut sacks thrown into a cliffside sea that is one of the most purely exhilarating sequences of the decade. The solitary confinement sequences generated specific censorship objections. McQueen's physical deterioration across those sequences is rendered with a specificity that several certification boards flagged as gratuitously prolonged. The British Board of Film Classification in the United Kingdom required cuts before certifying it for restricted release. Australia classified it for adult audiences only after specifically flagging the confinement sequences. West Germany required cuts to multiple scenes before approving theatrical certification.
Several South American countries with military governments at the time banned it entirely, reading the film's portrait of state imprisonment as a critique too pointed to permit. It grossed over $53 million domestically and became one of the year's biggest hits. McQueen considered it among his finest performances. The full uncut version is currently streaming on multiple platforms. Number 6. Aguirre, The Wrath of God, 1972.
Aguirre, ich sage dir auf den Kopf zu, dass du mit Ursula etwas vorhast.
Werner Herzog made this German film for approximately $370,000 in the actual Peruvian Amazon, with a cast and crew who were in genuine physical danger for significant portions of the production. That is not a dramatic exaggeration. The conditions were so extreme and the director's demands so uncompromising that the line between the film's subject matter and its production circumstances dissolved almost entirely. The film is about a group of Spanish conquistadors descending into madness and death as they search for El Dorado. The production was itself a controlled version of the same process. Klaus Kinski plays Don Lope de Aguirre, the Spanish nobleman who takes command of a doomed expedition and drives it further into the jungle and further into delusion with the absolute certainty of a man who has stopped being able to distinguish his own will from reality. Kinski and Herzog's relationship during production was so volatile that Herzog later claimed he had pointed a rifle at Kinski during one altercation, and that Kinski had threatened to leave the production multiple times. Neither man ever fully agreed on what had actually happened between them. The censorship battles were less about explicit content than about the film's political implications. Several South American countries banned it outright, with authorities in Peru and Brazil citing the film's depiction of Spanish colonialism and the treatment of indigenous peoples as inflammatory material. West Germany attached an age restriction for violent sequences. In the United Kingdom, the British Board of Film Classification required minor cuts before certifying it for release. The cuts were made to specific moments of violence against animals, which Herzog later acknowledged were genuine and unscripted, a confession that generated its own controversy. The full version is currently streaming on multiple platforms. It is one of the greatest films ever made about the relationship between megalomania and catastrophe, and watching Kinski in the final sequence, standing on a raft surrounded by monkeys as the boat circles in an eddy and everyone else is dead, is one of those images that never entirely leaves you. Down number 5, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. Tobe Hooper made this one in Texas for approximately $300,000 during the summer of 1973, under conditions so punishing that several cast members have described the production as genuinely traumatic. The temperature on set regularly exceeded 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The dinner table sequence was filmed continuously over 16 hours. Marilyn Burns was actually cut during certain sequences because the production could not afford enough fake blood, and Hooper decided real blood was more efficient. By any reasonable measure, the suffering visible on screen is not entirely performed. The film follows 5 young people who stop at a remote Texas farmhouse and encounter a family of unemployed slaughterhouse workers who have transferred their professional skills to human targets. Leatherface, the chainsaw-wielding figure in a mask made of human skin, became one of the most immediately iconic figures in the history of horror cinema. The film has almost no explicit gore by the standards of what followed it. The horror operates almost entirely through implication, sound design, and an atmosphere of complete dread that Hooper built from almost nothing. The British Board of Film Classification in the United Kingdom banned it outright on its first submission, and that ban remained in place for the entire decade. The film was eventually certified for a restricted video release in 1999, 25 years after its original release. During those 25 years, it was legally available in British cinemas, having screened before the Video Recordings Act came into force, but could not be sold or rented on tape anywhere in the country. In Australia, the film was refused classification and banned entirely for years before a restricted version was eventually certified. West Germany refused certification entirely. Brazil banned it. Several Scandinavian countries required substantial cuts before allowing any theatrical release. In the United States, several states attempted to enact local bans, which were eventually overturned. It grossed over $30 million domestically on a $300,000 budget, making it one of the most profitable films ever made relative to its cost. The full uncut version is currently streaming on multiple platforms. It is still one of the most unsettling films ever made, and the heat, exhaustion, and genuine distress visible in certain performances are a significant part of why. Sacht. Number 4, Caligula, 1979.
Today, we begin a new era.
This one has a production history so chaotic and so layered with competing intentions and mutual betrayals that it is genuinely difficult to determine who made it or what they were trying to make. Gore Vidal wrote the original screenplay. Tinto Brass directed most of it. Bob Guccione, the founder of Penthouse magazine, financed it, and then shot additional explicit sequences after Brass had finished, inserting them into the final cut without anyone else's consent. Malcolm McDowell, Helen Mirren, Peter O'Toole, and John Gielgud all appear in it, and all of them spent years afterward trying to explain their involvement. The film depicts the reign of the Roman Emperor Caligula, his corruption, his sexual depravity, and his eventual assassination, using the historical record as a framework for something that functions simultaneously as a genuine historical epic, a political allegory, and the most expensive explicitly sexual film ever produced. The scenes Guccione shot and inserted afterward are not simulated. That distinction matters enormously to the film's censorship history and to the legal proceedings it generated in multiple countries. In Italy, Guccione's home territory, authorities seized the film, and the distributor was prosecuted for obscenity. In Australia, it was refused classification entirely. The British Board of Film Classification in the United Kingdom refused certification on multiple submissions for years before eventually passing an edited version for restricted adult release. In the United States, the film was seized by police during theatrical runs in Boston and Atlanta, and the distributors faced criminal obscenity charges that took years to resolve. Several of the principal cast members took legal action attempting to prevent the release or to have their names removed from the credits. None of them succeeded. Vidal publicly disowned the finished film. Brass publicly disowned it. McDowell has given interviews alternately defending it and expressing regret about his involvement. The uncut version is currently streaming on multiple platforms. It is one of those films that is almost impossible to evaluate in conventional critical terms, because the question of what it actually is has never been definitively answered. It is extraordinary, incoherent, offensive, and genuinely cinematic in certain sequences, sometimes in the same scene. Number 3, Emmanuelle, 1974.
Vol Air France, 428, embarquement immédiat.
Just Jackin directed this French film for Trinacre Films on a budget of approximately $900,000 and produced something that became one of the highest-grossing French films in history, while simultaneously being banned, restricted, seized, and prosecuted in more countries than almost any other non-violent film of the decade. The combination of explicit sexual content and genuine production quality made it an anomaly that censors across the world did not have an adequate framework for categorizing. Sylvia Crystal plays Emmanuelle, the young wife of a French diplomat stationed in Bangkok, who explores her sexuality through a series of encounters that the film presents with languor and visual elegance, setting it sharply apart from the exploitation films it superficially resembles. Jackin shot it with a genuine eye for composition and used the Thai locations with a sensuality that gave the film a surface polish most explicitly. Sexual productions never attempted. The film ran for over 10 years on the Champs-Élysées in Paris, making it one of the most remarkable theatrical runs in cinema history. That commercial success did not prevent censors elsewhere from taking decisive action against it. In the United Kingdom, the British Board of Film Classification refused certification for years before eventually passing a heavily cut version for restricted adult release. Australia banned the original cut, and the edited version circulated in restricted formats. Singapore banned it outright. Malaysia refused certification entirely. Several Middle Eastern countries prohibited it on religious grounds. In the United States, the film faced a patchwork of local censorship responses that varied dramatically by state and by county, with some jurisdictions allowing the original cut and others prosecuting distributors for showing it at all. The legal battles generated by those prosecutions produced court decisions that clarified American obscenity law in ways that affected film distribution well into the following decade. Crystal became an international star because of this film and spent years trying to escape the role's shadow. She largely failed during her lifetime. The uncut version is currently streaming on multiple platforms. The 10-year Champs-Élysées run remains a record that has never been approached. Number 2, The Tin Drum, 1979. Volker Schlendorf adapted Günter Grass's Nobel Prize-winning novel for this German and French co-production and delivered a film so uncompromising in its treatment of its subject matter that it generated one of the most remarkable censorship incidents of the entire decade. Not in Germany or France or Australia or any of the territories where banning was routine, but in Oklahoma City, 1997, nearly 20 years after the film's original release. The film follows Oscar Matzerath, a boy in Danzig who, on his 3rd birthday, decides to stop growing and retains the body of a 3-year-old for the rest of his life, while the world around him descends into the madness of Nazism and war. He carries a tin drum, which he beats relentlessly, and possesses a scream that can shatter glass. The film uses Oscar's arrested development as a sustained metaphor for the refusal to participate in the adult world's capacity for atrocity. It won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film and the Palme d'Or at Cannes simultaneously, which gave it a level of critical legitimacy that made outright banning in most Western territories politically complicated. The British Board of Film Classification in the United Kingdom required cuts to specific sequences involving the child actor before certifying it for restricted release. Australia classified it for adults only. Several countries required edits before allowing theatrical certification. The Oklahoma incident involved police seizing copies of the film from a video rental store and a resident's home following a complaint. A municipal judge ruled that a specific scene involving the child actor constituted child pornography under Oklahoma law. The ruling was eventually overturned by a federal court, but not before drawing international attention to American censorship that the film's original release had not. Grass, who had supervised the adaptation closely, called the Oklahoma prosecution an act of cultural barbarism. The federal court's eventual ruling fully vindicated the film. The uncut version is currently streaming on multiple platforms, and it remains one of the finest literary adaptations ever committed to film. Number 1, I Spit on Your Grave, 1978.
I'll give you something to remember.
Mayor Zarchi made this film in Connecticut for approximately $650,000 and created something that generated more sustained censorship activity across more territories over a longer period than any other film of the decade. The raw number of separate banning orders, censorship rulings, custom seizures, critical condemnations, and criminal complaints accumulated by this film across its full international history is genuinely without parallel in the 1970s. No other film came close. The film follows Jennifer Hills, a writer played by Camille Keaton, who rents a rural cabin to work on her novel and is attacked, assaulted repeatedly, and left for dead by a group of local men. She survives. The second half of the film is her methodical revenge against each of them. Zarchi shot both halves with the same unflinching directness, refusing to make the assault sequences easier to watch, or the revenge sequences more conventionally satisfying. The discomfort the film produces is consistent and deliberate throughout. Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel devoted an entire episode of their television program to condemning it, calling it a vile bag of garbage and arguing that it should not be permitted to exist. That condemnation, broadcast to a national audience, was more effective as an advertisement than anything the distributor could have purchased. The British Board of Film Classification in the United Kingdom refused certification entirely, and the film appeared on the Video Nasty List in 1984. The United Kingdom ban remained in place until 2001. Australia banned it outright for years, before eventually certifying a cut version for restricted release. West Germany, Norway, Ireland, and Iceland maintained bans on the film for most of its existence. Several American states attempted to impose local prohibitions, which prompted court challenges that continued into the early 1980s. Zarchi always maintained that the film was made as a direct response to a real assault he had witnessed and tried to help the victim of, and that he intended to depict the experience honestly rather than exploitatively. Whether that intention is legible in the finished film is a question that has generated more words of critical argument than almost any other low-budget American film ever made. The full uncut version is currently streaming on multiple platforms. The same film that Roger Ebert wanted erased from existence is now available on demand at any hour of any day. The bans lifted. The controversy never entirely did. These 15 films were cut, seized, banned, and in some cases prosecuted in criminal court. Directors had their names removed. Distributors faced jail time. But every version that survived the censors is now streaming uncut, available to anyone. The films outlasted every authority that tried to contain them.